Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland off today. Joining us again, Michelle Eisen, organizing member of the Starbucks Workers United from the Buffalo store. Michelle, last time we spoke was about almost a year ago. About 11 months. You guys had successfully sort of unionized, and since then was dealing with sort of the stonewalling by Starbucks in terms of getting a contract. And in the past 24 hours, you've had some really great news.
Yeah. Starbucks has just decided to stop fighting and to work with the union. And it seems that they want to expedite getting a contract with the unionized locations as quickly as possible. And they've made a lot of other commitments in order to prove to us that they're serious about this. So it's been great. It's a completely different world than it was when I talked to you a year ago.
All right. So tell us what's happened since that world. And then we can talk about because this agreement, at least in principle, and there's some details, and you guys have issued a joint statement, actually came out of a side litigation. But before we get to that, walk us through what's happened over the past year.
I think we spoke, it was just prior to the Senate hearing. Is that correct?
I think it was, before Howard Schulz got up there and got dressed down.
Yeah.
I mean, he was still going around saying this is like the Warsaw Ghetto, and we're going to share a blanket with each other, except for you're not going to get health care. Yeah.
He was telling that story for a while. Since then, things didn't really change until very, very recently. The same things we discussed about a year ago, the treatment of the unionized workers by Starbucks, the withholding of benefits, the refusing to come to the bargaining table in any sort of meaningful way to try to get contracts in this. Now almost, we're just sitting at, I think, 399 unionized locations. We should hit 400 next week or something like that. And it continued like that from the last conversation we had all the way through to, a few days ago. There was a statement that the company had issued back in December. It was actually the day before Elmwood's 2-year anniversary of unionizing that made it sound like they wanted to move forward. But then we didn't see that in any of their actions. They released the statement. It went to the media before it even went to the union, which is kind of a red flag. And then we didn't really see anything change. And then, just in the last few days, all of a sudden, they're doing what I always hoped the company would do. What this very naive barista who started in 2010 because this was a better company to work for always kind of said, I've seen them make mistakes. In 14 years, I've seen mistakes be made, but I've also seen them do what they needed to do to right those mistakes. And I was waiting for that moment in this situation, and it has finally arrived.
So give me a sense of they were taken to the National Labor Relations Board. There were complaints put in there about how they had fired workers, how they were harassing workers. But the benefits, you had, let's just say, for the sake of argument, 399 stores that had been unionized out of several thousand Starbucks around the country. How did they sort of punish those union shops versus what kind of treatment they were providing for the non-union shops?
So one of the tactics they took very early on in the campaign, I think it was May of 2022, was to grant a suite of new benefits that included wage increases, included a whole bunch of other things, different health benefits, different accruals of things like sick time and vacation time, stuff like that. Credit card tipping, which was huge. That was one of the first asks that the union actually made when we won, was to say we wanted credit card tipping instituted in our stores. Starbucks had never allowed credit card tipping. That's believe it or not.
So when you got your coffee, you use a credit card, there's no how much do you want to tip thing, right? Okay.
No, you could tip for a very long time, it was just cash. Then the Starbucks app came out and you could tip through the app, but credit card tipping until the union didn't exist within the company. And how many people, I never have cash on me. Everyone is using their credit card. And so they granted those benefits, but they said, if you're a union shop, you don't get them. And if you're a store attempting to organize, you also don't get them. And so there's different like tiers of stores that fall into different categories. So some stores waited till those benefits were granted and then organized anyway. Very smart strategy. So there are some union stores that do have these benefits because they were, strategic. But there are stores like mine, who was the first one, who has nothing. There's 2 stores here in Buffalo who organized the first, and as far as the tiers go, we've gotten absolutely nothing. And so this is significant because on top of granting these benefits, finally, as a show of good faith, a show that they're serious, that they do want to proceed, in a meaningful way, that also means calculating the back pay that would have come from what those tips would have been, and calculating the back pay that would have come from the raises that we also didn't receive. So, workers are finally going to be, as the NLRB would call it, be made whole for all of the last 2.5 years. That's,
that's a big deal. And let's just back up a little bit. This came out of this round of negotiations started, and we should say Howard Schulz is gone now. He is no longer the CEO. He hasn't been for about a year. He's also no longer on the board of directors, is my understanding. He's still, I think, a major a shareholder, but he's no longer on the board of directors. So he's stepped away. And I've read a lot of stuff about like the idea of like, sometimes founders of the company, they don't look at these things in the same way that like, people come in who are, realize like, this is a business. These are not my children who work here. I can't treat them. I got to treat them like adults. And it sort of has that feel, but this started with a lawsuit that Starbucks had filed against the union for calling themselves the Starbucks union, essentially.
Yes, essentially. It was a trademark lawsuit that was filed late last fall. They filed a lawsuit against us. I think we countersued, the way you do things, the way the legal world works. And both parties had agreed to settle this issue in mediation. So it wasn't going to go as far as being decided by, a judge. And that's what my understanding is. This was all that was happening in that day, or all that was supposed to happen as far as we knew, was just a mediation session to try to settle this trademark issue. And then that session finished. And, a conversation was had between their legal counsel and our legal counsel that kind of paved the way to talk about this agreement. And it was, the word agreement is kind of strange to me because technically speaking, this isn't an agreement. It's, right. There's no contract yet. The workers haven't been at the table to be able to negotiate this contract, which is what is going to happen. What they were able to reach was some sort of peace where they could say, all right, both sides are ready to move forward. And the company said, what do we need to do to show you that we are serious? We want to proceed in good faith. And that was us saying, we need you to give us the benefits that you withheld from these workers. If you can do that, and you can do that quickly or immediately, then we're going to know that you're serious, and we are ready to turn over a new leaf. Let's go. And they said, yes, we will do that. And so they gave other things as well, which is amazing.
What were the other things?
The agreement to settle all current litigation, there are, I can't even tell you, probably dozens of ULP hearings that are either happening
unfair
or
labor
scheduled
practice.
To happen. Yes.
Unfair labor practice hearings with administrative judges with the labor department, essentially.
Correct. Yes. So to settle all of that litigation, including the trademark issue. So that's going to be settled. And the biggest thing for us was essentially, they said, we want a path forward to allow our workers the choice to organize without any level of interference. And we are vowing that we won't interfere in that process. We will not let our managers, our store managers or district managers interfere in that process. Going forward, if a Starbucks worker or workers at a particular store want to join the union, we are going to let that go through without any level of what we've just seen in the last 2.5 years, which is amazing. And with no limitations to that, is my understanding. So like you said, we're at 400 stores. There are just under 9,000 in the US, I believe. it seems to me like what the company is saying is the path forward for our company is to have a unionized workforce, and we are going to embrace that instead of fight it. And what that means for Starbucks and Starbucks workers is unbelievable. What that also means in terms of just the food service sector or any worker for a multi-global, multi-billion-dollar corporation, it just seems like this is lasting. This is something very, very important.
This is, I think, like that last point, I think we can't sort of emphasize enough, because once the company basically makes the assessment that it's just easier for us to not fight this, it is more than likely, it is also then becomes immediately easier for them to have an all unionized force at that point, because they want a streamlined process. So if they have, 1,000 stores that are unionized or 2,000 stores that are unionized, it's easier for them in the long run just to have all the stores unionized, because then they just know we don't have to think about this. We know we can negotiate one time, we're done, and we have it, and everybody's unionized there. And this could be the biggest sort of like you say, service industry unionization that has happened in, I mean, a long, long time, because we don't have fast food unions. We don't have, and this is becoming increasingly a really important sector. And this is, I mean, it's an amazing story, because it really does feel like, again, you got to get an agreement on paper, and you don't know what that's going to look like, but they have made the big decision. It seems like, there's no reason why they would have been, this would be a really weird way to fake you out in some way.
It would be. And I always said, I thought I'd know in my gut when we'd reached this point. And it feels like we've reached this point, which is amazing. What I think is also huge and should be noted is the company has also agreed to let the workers in these stores negotiate these contracts. The table will have workers. This isn't like, a lot of these backroom deals that you hear about where, president of the union and, president of the company come together and they hash this out, and then they come out and they're like, we've come to all of these solutions and these agreements, and now we're going to have the workers ratify this contract. That's not what's happening. This is step one in what's going to be a major victory. We've gotten to the point of the company saying, we want to work with you. Let's get an agreement. And now we get the workers across the table, which is all we've asked for the last 2.5 years, to negotiate their own contracts for their own stores. And that's huge. I don't know that I've ever heard of anything happening like that. Every one of these locations is going to have an elected bargaining representative. So you've got 400 stores, you've got 400 bargaining representatives.
That's great.
It's massive.
And so you said, okay, they're going to calculate back pay, right? That you lost under the tipping constraints that they had imposed upon the union stores. Is there a timeline? Like, I assume, obviously, they haven't paid you yet because they just announced this yesterday. But is there a timeline? Are there ways in which you can say, like, oh, okay, this date is passed, red flag goes up type of situation?
I don't know that we've reached what they've told to us, and what we've asked for is as soon as possible. There are things that can happen faster than other elements. Like getting the credit card tipping into the stores can happen a little bit faster than calculating what the back pay is because that's, I have a different pay rate than probably every one of my coworkers in my store. We all have different pay rates. We've all been with the company for a different period of time. I started at the beginning of this campaign. Someone might have come into the store a year into it. So there's just a lot of different variables for how to calculate that. They have to do that. That's on them. And we have to sort of check their results to make sure that things are, done correctly. I don't have any reason to believe that they're not going to do this as quickly as possible, because they publicly stated they were going to do this.
I mean,
so it would be a bad move to not do that.
What and lastly, like, what are like the sort of the cultural implications of this? I mean, you have this relationship with Starbucks where you're like, you'd seen them as a longtime employee make mistakes, but then correct it. Like, are the shareholders, the board of directors? I mean, is there a sense that like some of them really felt like this is not reflective of the company that we want to be, and that maybe there was a little bit of too much in loco parentis from Schulz, and I wonder, like, on that level, is there like a cultural aspect to this within the company? And I would also imagine like your customers, because I'm going to go back to Starbucks now. I mean, I don't go every day, but I mean, if I, like, I'm not going to avoid it. Let's put it that way.
I think what we're seeing with this new acceptance is a shift in the culture of the company, I hope, or at least a commitment to be who they've always said that they are. And maybe that's more what it is. I think what we saw with Schulz was, this was his legacy. This was his child. As you said, he had built this, the company's 50 plus years strong. And I think there was, we were coming along and saying, hey, sir, this is not as great as you think it is. And I think that hurts. I think that's hard to hear something like that. I think in relationship to the new CEO and the board of directors and the shareholders, they are able to maybe distance themselves a little bit from that and just look at it. I hope not purely from a business standpoint, but certainly from a business standpoint where they can say, look, this isn't good for us right now, the way things are going. And we need something to shift. Starbucks has always referred to us as partners. That's their whole thing. Part of that is because we all have shares within the company. It's a very small amount. I think all Starbucks workers in the country own something like 2% total. But still, that's why they call us that. But they've also used that term to imply that we have more of a say in our workplace and in our working conditions than we've ever actually had. And so this right now is the ability to put their money where their mouth is. If we are the workers are negotiating our working conditions and everything that goes with that, then yes, we are partners. And I think they can say that in good faith without it being like a sort of like ha-ha joke, which is what it kind of has been for a very long time. I hope that's what they want, because that's certainly what we want.
Well, Michelle, congratulations. I mean, this is, it really is amazing. You must, I know I've read a couple of articles where you've been quoted in there, and it sounds like you were like crying with joy. And I can imagine this has been really quite a journey for you. We will check back in with you in the coming months to see how this is going. But again, congratulations. You guys did a great job. This is really like, what an important example and illustration, for, just, workers across the country who, saw what you guys did in that first, shop in Buffalo, and the implications that it's going to have for not just your shop, your company, but across an entire massive sector of our economy. It really is great. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.